hey, this is what I require. You don't have to do these things because it is a boundary. A standard and the boundary are the same thing. So, setting the boundary, the standard is more of this is what I'll accept, whereas the boundary is more of if this happens, this is how I will respond to this.
Even if you change your mind because you've been together or something and you guys work through it, there still has to be some seriousness that you're going to uphold that. Otherwise, then it doesn't really mean anything. And plus, then you also look like you don't respect yourself. And the second that you start doing things or trying to do things or trying to say things to get someone else to do something,
Right.
you have an expectation, including trying to change yourself just to influence someone else.
Right.
That's an expectation.
So that it almost sort of becomes a form of control, right? If even in that kind of ridiculous scenario where if you have an expectation that your girlfriend's not going to cheat on you, you're now putting all this pressure on her. You're trying to control her actions, right? So now you have to, we talk about sharing locations, but now you're sharing your location because you're like trying to control where she goes and what she does, right? And a lot of people interpret what we're saying as being controlling in that way.
Because they think about it that way.
Right. But when you have a standard, that's where this stuff comes from. But when you have a standard, it's like, okay, you want someone to do whatever they want to do. It's fine. Like you don't need to control them, right? But if they want to be with you, then these are the things that you require, right? And that could be things like we said about, hey, I got to have location on, right? As a man, I'm the leader. I'm the man. That's how it is in the relationship. Like these things can be put out there as standards. We don't do girls' night out. That's not what we do. That's my standard. I don't date women that do that. I don't date women that do these things, right? Not in a serious relationship with them, right? So those all become standards instead of expectations. Whereas if they're expectations, you're going to be constantly monitoring, constantly watching, constantly like trying to control the situation so that you don't get hurt or you don't get disappointed or you don't get angry. Whereas the standard is sort of, it's more like take it or leave it. It's like, okay, hey, this is what I require. You don't have to do these things. And it really kind of overlaps with the idea of it sounds like a boundary because it is a boundary. A standard and the boundary are the same thing. So, setting the boundary and saying this is what, the standard is more of this is what I'll accept, whereas the boundary is more of if this happens, this is how I will respond to this.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, there we go. Done. Episode over.
It's your topic.
What do you think?
I mean, I agree, like, with what you said. I think the standard is also kind of like the blueprint of what you're looking for in a relationship. And it's similar to the boundaries, like you said, because to uphold a standard, you have to have a boundary, right? Like, to uphold a standard, you have to walk away if that standard is not met, right? Because then it's not a standard. It's I guess, an expectation. I don't know. It's I guess, I don't know. It would be confusing if someone had a standard, but then they like didn't do it.
Didn't
for
follow
you.
through, or
yeah,
yeah.
It's a little bit like
then it
desperate.
Then
like,
it's an expectation because then that's being used as a device in order to manipulate someone, right? Because if I say, Nicole, if you, I don't know, if you call me a name one more time other than John, then I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go to
exit.
the mall.
Oh, okay.
Whatever. I don't know. I'm just thinking of this on the fly. And then you call me a
Cotton-headed ninmuggins.
Wow. That's exactly what I swear that's exactly what I was gonna say. Okay, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Wow. 37.
Just saw it live.
Wow.
People probably won't believe you.
Get out of my mind.
I believe you because we do that all the time.
If you get in my mind one more time.
What are you gonna do?
But if I then do not follow through, right? Then I just use that to manipulate you, right? Because I'm giving you. That's what a threat is. Always a manipulation, right? Because a promise and a threat are different. A promise is if you do this is what I'm going to do, and you're following through. A threat is I'm just doing this in order to control you, to make you do something because I have no intention of doing the thing. So then it becomes a manipulation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because when I think of standards, I think of like in the beginning, you realizing what you want in a relationship. And that is kind of like what you will like you talked about, and like I said, what you will accept in a relationship, right? And then based on those standards, you probably have boundaries that are very similar. And with standards, you have to uphold those. You can't be like, you know, I won't tolerate being cheated on. And then the guy you're with cheats on you and you're just like, it's okay. I understand. Like, even if you change your mind because you've been together or something and you guys work through it, there still has to be some seriousness of that you're going to uphold that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because otherwise, like you said, then it doesn't really mean anything. And plus, then you also look like you don't respect yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And with standards in dating, you should have standards for yourself as well, too, as someone who's going out and dating or as somebody who's going to be in a relationship. Like, I'm going to act this way because that is how I choose to act and how I want to show up and the person I want to be. And it doesn't matter how that person shows up. This is what I'm going to do. And expectations, I mean, I feel like everybody has had an expectation at some point, right? And got butthurt about it.
Sure, yeah.
And it's easy to fall in having expectations, especially like you're talking about the guys who are being like, well, why shouldn't I expect my girlfriend not to cheat on me? That just makes logical sense. And I understand where they're coming from because in some way, why would you get in a relationship if you're going to cheat on somebody?
Right.
Like, I understand where that expectation comes from. But like you said, if it is an expectation, when it happens or if it happens, it's a lot more devastating because now you didn't have the standard to know what to do when that happens.
Right. Yeah.
And if you did have the standard to know what to do, you would be like, look, I care about you, but you did this. And a standard I have is I'm not going to stay in a relationship where someone cheats on me. And you have to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like expectations just make it more messy. You don't really know what you're doing. You're also projecting your things that you want. It is a form of control.
Yeah.
Expectations are a form of control. Like you trying to control the situation, you trying to control another person's behavior, and you can't.
Right.
And again, I understand that it can naturally happen. It's natural to have expectations pop up. But like you said, you do kind of have to hone it in and be like, hey, this feels more like an expectation. I need to instead have a standard. And I need to not stress about this thing because I can't control it. And instead have a standard where if this happens, I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the thing about it is that all expectations are ridiculous, right? Because you cannot control another person's behavior.
Right.
You can only control your own behavior. So when you put an expectation on anything, whether even the weather, right? You get disappointed when the weather's not sunny when you want it to be sunny, or it's cold, or it's raining, and that's an expectation. And it's ridiculous because you can't control the weather. So why are you putting your emotional investment in something that you have no control over? You're just asking yourself to be hurt when you have expectations. But having a standard is a totally different matter. So no matter what the expectation is, it's ridiculous. Even when guys say, "Oh no, it's not ridiculous to have an expectation that my girlfriend's not going to cheat on me," and I use that one because that's the one that always gets thrown in my face. But it is ridiculous because you're not that other person. You can't control them. You can't watch them 24/7.
Right.
You can't have that expectation. You can believe that they're not going to. You can have the standard that if they do, right? You know, obviously you shouldn't be in a relationship with someone that you don't believe or trust.
Right.
But at the same time, the expectation is still, you can never have the expectation because you can't know. You don't know what's going to happen with someone else and what they're going to do. So
that's true. Well, and we've talked before about influencing people, right? Like based on your behavior. And see, I even think that's a little bit messy because I think if you're expecting to influence people with your behavior, that's still an expectation. Right. And there is no guarantee that you can influence a person.
Right.
And I know we've talked about it before, but that's why I want to keep stressing to people that you really need to focus on you. And a standard is what you want, what you will accept, what you're going to do, all the things that involve you.
Right.
And the second that you start doing things or trying to do things or trying to say things to get someone else to do something, you have an expectation, including trying to change yourself just to influence someone else. Right. That's an expectation.
It can be. It depends on how you think about it, right? And how you're doing it, right? So if you're changing yourself in order to influence someone else, and that is your expectation that it will happen,
right?
Then it becomes an expectation. If you change yourself in the hopes of influencing someone else, but you've already made peace with in your head that your change is a good change that you want to do, and hopefully it will change them. But if it doesn't, that's okay. I don't expect that it will, right? Then that's a different thing. And it's a little bit...
I think that even parts of that would still be expectations, in my opinion, because I think the only way to really have no expectation, I think that is having less. I'm not saying that it's not, but I think there is still expectations there underlying. I think the only way to get rid of expectations of influencing other people is just being like, I'm going to be the best version of myself.
Right.
And hopefully that inspires others to be the best version of their self. That I don't feel like is an expectation. And I feel like that's the only way that you can say, like, I hope me being a better person influences other people without it being an expectation.
Well, there are going to be occasions where you're going to try to get someone to do something or believe a thing or change their perspective on a thing. And that's important because we're always doing that. That's what influence is. But you can do it in a way where you do have an expectation on them, and you can do it in a way where it's not. Just, as another example, let's say that you're, shooting an arrow at a target, right? Mm-hmm. You can have the expectation that you're going to hit the target. And if you do, you're going to be ticked off when you don't. Like, I'm such bad luck. Why does this happen? I aim, all that, that stuff, right? But you can let go of that expectation, but still try to hit that target.
Right. That's how I play board games.
Right.
I let Jesus take the wheel. I don't expect to win, but I'm going to try to win, but I don't expect to. And then most of the time I end up winning.
Right. So we're on the same page here. So that's what I'm saying, is that you can try to influence someone. Mm-hmm. You just can't have the expectation. And it is hard and it is subtle, the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. But it's how much stake that you've put into it. Right. Mm-hmm. When you have an expectation, because the thing is, if you don't influence them, how disappointed are you going to be? Right. And it's the same thing. If I'm aiming at that target, obviously I want to hit that target. Mm-hmm. Right. But if I have an expectation that I'm going to hit that target, I'm going to be pretty disappointed if I don't hit the target.
Right.
If I say I want to hit the target, but I don't have an expectation, then I shoot my arrow. And if it doesn't hit the target, then I am still a little disappointed, obviously, because I had a hope, an ambition for that thing. Mm-hmm. But it's not devastating because I didn't in my mind think that this is going to happen.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the difference. So you can influence a person and you can set out to influence a person. But the question is, how much stake are you putting into it in the sense that what will happen if this doesn't happen? And are you only doing the thing in order to influence them?
Right. Right. Which is not that I would say is an expectation. Then if you're changing yourself in order to get an outcome, that's controlling, which is an expectation, right? Like, and expectations just cause so much more inner turmoil, like you said. It causes so much more pain when something doesn't happen. And as a formal people pleaser, people pleasers tend to have a lot of expectations, right? Because they're like, I'm doing this, so they should act this way. And I'm doing this to make them happy. So hopefully they do something to make me happy, or because they don't communicate about it properly. So unfortunately, a lot of people pleasers end up in this situation. And as somebody who was a people pleaser and had expectations that didn't get met, and then would get butthurt about it, and then realize that it's all in my head and no one even knew what the heck was going on.
Right, exactly.
You have to understand. And I think when I stopped being a people pleaser is when I understood the difference between expectations and standards. And it's also when you understand that you have control of your life, and you have the control for the standards, and you have the control for the boundaries. And it's no ill will towards anyone else. Like, if they don't meet your standards or whatever, or, they cross your boundary, but it's what you have to do in order to uphold what you believe in and who you are and what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's where the nice guy syndrome comes from, right? So, in fact, there's a real good book on it because King likes the books. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. So, who I've had on my YouTube channel too. Cool guy, but the idea is that a nice guy, what he does is he has all these expectations. He has what Robert Glover talked about in his book, and he called it implicit contracts, right? So it's not explicitly state, it's implicit. If I do the dishes, I will get sex, right? That's an implicit. That's a nice guy contract because what it does is it puts burdens on people. You're putting expectations, you're putting obligations on the people that they haven't obligated themselves to because they feel like
know nothing about.
Exactly. You do something. That's why nice guys get girls gifts and take them to nice restaurants and stuff. Not that you can't do that, but nice guys do it because they want something. And it doesn't even...
They want her to like him.
Right. I was going to say, it doesn't even have to be sex because that's what a lot of guys are like, no, that's not me. That's what a jerk does. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be sex. And in fact, most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's you just want her to like you and you think there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, you're trying to buy that affection. You're trying to buy that love. You're doing something with the expectation that something... it's going to happen, that this person is going to act or respond a certain way. And the reason why it's so problematic is because what happens when they don't act that way or they don't respond the way that you feel a sense of injustice.
Right.
Hey, I did this, right? They never asked you to do it, but I did this, so I deserve this, right? And it's unfair, and that's what happens. And that's why a lot of times women really don't like nice guys, because
there's a secret contract behind what they're doing and everything that they do.
It's because
it's
not
the
nice.
Expectation.
Exactly.
You know? And she doesn't know what it is, but she can feel that this is an exchange rather than a gift. A gift is something you give somebody and you don't respect something or you don't expect something in return.
Right.
A thing that you're giving somebody in order to get something back, like women can sense that. And like you said, a lot of time with nice guys, even if they bring like flowers to a first date, it's like, you don't know anything about me and you're giving me this thing. And it feels almost like you're trying to win me over with this thing rather than allowing me to get to know you and really decide whether I want to be with you romantically or not.
And you could, and I've coached guys on this before. It's confusing to a lot of guys, but you can bring women flowers on the first date. You absolutely can. It's just how you do it. How you come across, and you will come across, your true heart will come out in the way that you do it. You can't help but come across that way. So if it's like, you're buying the flowers because you're hoping that this will impress her, that she'll like you. When you say it, when you give her it, it's going to come across like that. But if you're buying flowers because you're just like, hey, you're just cool. Like, here you go. I got some flowers for you. Like, let's go on the date, right? It's not a big deal. It's just like, you just want to do it because you're just a cool guy. You know what I mean? Like, you enjoy giving people gifts and doing cool stuff for them, right? That's how it's going to come across, and it's going to come across as charming, and so it doesn't have to do with the actions. It's always like, why are you doing the action?
And women are very intuitive, so it's like, even if she doesn't know exactly, she can maybe sense what's going on. Because like you said, it's not like giving her flowers or something on the first date is an automatic, like, you're trying to buy her affection or whatever, but there is this sort of like energy that you pick up as a woman with a man that's doing things in order to get you to like him versus because he wants to do them because it's how he operates.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's also why sometimes for guys asking a girl out, it's a lot of times